The wind in Willow Creek estates always smelled like fresh-cut grass and quiet desperation. Every lawn had to be exactly 3 inches tall, measured with a tape measure on the first of every month, or you got a yellow warning letter from the HOA board. No bird feeders allowed because they attracted vermin. Flags could only fly on national holidays, and only if they matched the approved color palette. Paint colors were locked down to sage whisper or stone beige. Anything else earned you a fine before your coffee got cold. I knew all the rules by heart. I'd paid enough of them. My name is Lila Hayes, and I had lived on Maple Lane for 12 years, the same street where every other house looked like it had been cloned in a factory. I was the single woman who bought the fixer-upper at the end of the cul-de-sac, the one the neighbors whispered about at block parties. She's that outsider who never joins the potlucks. Probably lets her grass grow wild on purpose. They didn't know I mowed at dawn, so Karen Whitfield, the HOA president, couldn't catch me with a ruler. Karen Whitfield was the queen of Willow Creek, and she wore her crown like it was made of spite and hairspray. 58 years old, always in a pastel blazer with the little gold HOA pin glinting like a sheriff's badge. She smiled at you with perfect teeth while writing you up for having the wrong shade of mulch. Her voice was honey over broken glass. We just want to keep our property values up, dear. Translation: do what I say or I'll make your life hell. That Tuesday, the official letter arrived in my mailbox, embossed envelope, the whole 9 yards. Emergency compliance hearing, mandatory attendance. I was being cited for willful and repeated violation of landscaping standards plus failure to maintain community aesthetic harmony. The fine listed was $12,450. Pay or face foreclosure proceedings on my home because the HOA lien had priority. They wanted me to sign a waiver at the meeting accepting a one-time goodwill payment of $2,000 to cover moving expenses and walk away quietly. I stood in my kitchen, reading it twice my hands steady, even though my stomach was doing flips. 12 years of this. 12 years of Karen's tape measure, 12 years of anonymous neighbor complaints that somehow always traced back to her golf cart, cruising past my house at 6 a.m. I had paid $47,000 in fines over the year's money I scraped together from freelance graphic design gigs and late-night coffee runs. I never fought back. I just paid and smiled and kept my head down. Because my mother taught me silence was a weapon you sharpened in the dark. The hearing was scheduled for Thursday at the community clubhouse, the same building Karen had redecorated twice, with dues money, while claiming the roof needed urgent repairs. I arrived 5 minutes early because if you're on time, you're late in Karen's world. The room smelled of lemon polish and entitlement. Folding chairs arranged in a perfect U shape around a mahogany table that probably cost more than my car. Karen sat at the head like a judge. To her, right, the treasurer, a nervous man who never met my eyes. To her left, the secretary already tapping her pen like she was bored. "Sit down, Lila dear," Karen said without looking up from her clipboard. Her voice was warm syrup. "We're all family here. Let's keep this civil." I sat. The chair legs scraped loud on the tile exactly the way she hated. She flinched just a fraction. "Good. We have reviewed your file," she continued, clasping her hands like a concerned teacher. "The violations are extensive. Dead flowers last spring, Christmas lights left up until February, your mailbox decal was peeling again. The board has been more than patient. But rules are rules. Property values are dropping because of people like you. People like me. The single woman. The one who didn't have a husband to mow the lawn at the exact approved time." I kept my face blank. I had practiced this expression for years. The treasurer slid a single sheet across the table. "Sign the waiver accepting the $2,000 relocation assistance, and we'll forgive the outstanding liens. Otherwise, we proceed with foreclosure. You understand, of course, that fighting this would be expensive." Karen leaned forward, eyes glittering. "Sign it, Lila. Don't make this difficult. You've always been extraneous to the aesthetic." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. I was going to sign not because I agreed, but because $2,000 was $2,000 and I needed time to breathe. Freedom had a price, and I was ready to pay it cheap. The side door opened. Mr. Elliot Braxton, the community attorney, stepped in carrying a thick blue folder. He looked exactly like the man who had notarized my mother's papers years ago, wild white hair, tweed jacket that smelled of old books. He didn't sit. He placed the folder on the table with a heavy thud that made Karen's smile flicker. "There will be no signing of waivers today," he said calmly. Karen blinked. "Excuse me? MS. Hayes is agreeing to the terms. She knows she gets nothing." Braxton adjusted his glasses and looked straight at me, not at her. "MS. Hayes is the primary reason we are gathered here today." The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Karen's perfect smile cracked at the edges. Braxton opened the folder slowly, like he was unveiling a magic trick everyone had paid to see fail. According to the documents filed in 2010, the HOA charter gave the board full authority. However, my client, the late Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, came to see me regularly over the last 15 years. She was very specific about which documents were public and which would activate upon her passing. Karen's face went rigid. Eleanor had no authority here. I built this board from the ground up. The reserves are under my control, the common land, the clubhouse, everything. Braxton made a sound that was almost a laugh, dusty and dry. "It appears you labored under several misconceptions regarding Eleanor's financial acumen and her legal preparations." He pulled out a document bound in blue legal paper, the wax seal cracked, but still intact. "The original charter you reference was superseded by a living trust and master deed, established 3 months before the community broke ground and updated annually. The assets within this trust fall outside the jurisdiction of the HOA board entirely." "What assets?" Karen demanded, standing up so fast her chair rolled backward. Her voice had lost its honey. "On the contrary, the Willow Creek land itself, the clubhouse, the roads, the reserve fund, all of it was placed into a blind trust structure. Eleanor kept it entirely separate from any board accounts, and through aggressive investment strategies she managed herself. The principal has grown considerably." The treasurer actually gasped. The secretary stopped tapping her pen. I sat there feeling the floor tilt under me. I had come here ready to lose my house for $2,000. Now the numbers Braxton was about to drop felt like coordinates on a map to another planet. "How much?" The treasurer whispered, greed overriding fear. Braxton ignored him and turned fully toward me. "Lila, your mother left specific instructions. She predicted this exact scene. She even predicted the waiver." He slid a sealed, white envelope across the table past Karen's clenched fist directly into my hands. My name was written in my mother's looping, elegant handwriting. Karen was trembling now. "Read it. Read whatever fantasy she wrote. It doesn't matter. I will contest this. I will bury you in litigation for 20 years. Braxton looked at her over the rim of his glasses. "You could try Mrs. Whitfield, but I assure you Eleanor prepared for that too." He lifted the document and began to read. The room felt like a vacuum. The introduction to the Eleanor Hayes Revocable Trust. It begins with a quote transcribed exactly as she instructed. Braxton's voice rang clear. "You will get nothing." I froze. I remembered those words. I remembered the afternoon 3 years ago when I had come home to find Karen in my driveway with her tape measure and a camera. I had begged her to give me 1 more week to fix the flower bed. She had smiled that same smile and said calmly, "Lila, you will get nothing. No extensions, no mercy. Sign the fine agreement, or I'll make sure the entire board knows you're the reason property values are tanking." At the time, I thought she was talking about me. Braxton continued reading the words my mother had written for this very moment. "That is what the HOA president believes is the destiny of my daughter. But today, the only person who will leave this room with nothing is the woman who thought she owned us." Karen sat down hard, her mouth opening and closing without sound. The color had drained from her face, leaving 2 angry red spots on her cheeks. I was pulled backward in time to the day my mother married the developer who later sold the land to the first homeowners. She had been the silent partner, the one who signed every check while the men took the credit. She never raised her voice. She just polished the silver and kept the books and made herself small so her capital could grow big. I remembered the tiny subtractions. The way Karen would drive her golf cart past my house every morning, measuring my grass with a ruler while neighbors watched from their windows. The way she posted anonymous photos on the community Facebook page calling my yard an eyesore that brings down everyone's retirement dreams. The Christmas when she vetoed my simple string lights because they weren't approved seasonal decor, and then put up her own massive lighted reindeer display that blinked all night. My mother had watched it all, and she had planned. Braxton reached into the folder again. The assets within the trust have been managed aggressively. Real estate holdings, municipal bonds, a significant early position in several local development firms. Eleanor did not touch the principal. She let it compound. He looked at the summary sheet. Based on yesterday's closing numbers, the total value of the liquid and non-liquid assets sits somewhere between $19 and $27 million. Silence. Absolute bomb blast silence. Karen whispered, "That is a lie." Then she shouted it. "That is a lie. If she had that kind of money, why did I pay for the new clubhouse roof last year? Why did I cover the legal fees for the fence dispute? Because if she had paid for them, you would have asked where the money came from, and then you would have tried to take it," Braxton said calmly. "This is not fraud, Mrs. Whitfield. This is a woman who knew exactly who she was dealing with." Karen stood again, smoothing her blazer. "This is elder abuse. You manipulated a confused woman into signing documents she didn't understand. We will have your license, Mr. Braxton. We will sue this firm into the ground." Braxton didn't raise his voice. "I have video recordings of every signing session dating back to 2008. I have affidavits from 2 independent psychiatrists attesting to Eleanor's competency. There's no fraud here. There's only a woman who spent 30 years constructing a legal fortress specifically designed to keep you out." He turned his body fully toward me, creating a private space at the end of the table. "Lila, there are signatures required to transfer title. It will take a few weeks. The trust pays for your legal representation, your tax advisors, and security if you need it." He reached into the bottom of the file and slid a thick-bound binder toward me. "But before you sign anything, the money is the headline. It is not the story. Open it." I hesitated, my hand hovering. Then I opened the binder. The first page was an email printed out. "Emergency fine relief, anonymous donor." Below it, a copy of a cashier's check that had paid my $3,800 landscaping fine 3 years ago. The one that had almost bankrupted me. I turned the page. Another receipt. My Christmas lights fine paid by a community beautification grant I had never applied for. Braxton's voice was gentle. "She wasn't just watching Lila. She was catching you every single time." Page after page, the binder told a story I had lived without ever knowing the author. Every fine I had scraped together to pay every late-night panic attack over another yellow notice, every anonymous complaint that somehow vanished after a mysterious donor stepped in it, had all been my mother. She had hired a private investigator just to track the HOA violations the moment they were posted. She used voice scramblers, prepaid cards, and shell companies so Karen would never trace it back. "She wanted you to struggle," Braxton explained softly, "but she didn't want you to drown. There is a difference." Karen was staring at the upside-down documents, her face a mask of pure horror. Not horror at the money, horror at the autonomy. She had believed she controlled every blade of grass, every dollar of dues. Now she was learning the grass had been growing in someone else's garden all along. I kept turning pages. There was a receipt for the new roof on my shed after Karen's wind damage inspection mysteriously declared it a hazard. There was the mechanic invoice when my car broke down the day before a big client meeting, and a loyalty rebate magically covered the transmission repair. My mother had set alerts. She knew within hours. Karen finally found her voice. This is deceit. This is a violation of the HOA charter. You can't hide assets like that. Braxton corrected her with the patience of a man who had written the rules himself. Actually, you can. The trust was master deed protected. The growth of the assets is ironclad. Eleanor paid her taxes. She just didn't pay the ego tax you required. I closed the binder. The weight felt different now. It was no longer paper. It was 30 years of undercover resistance. My mother hadn't been a victim of Karen's little kingdom. She had been the resistance fighter operating behind enemy lines, wearing beige cardigans and nodding politely while her capital quietly bought the entire board's leverage. Karen stood up again. This won't stand. I will find a loophole. I will hire the best firm in Chicago. You can't cut an HOA president out. It is unnatural. Braxton closed the folder with a sharp snap. You are the president, Mrs. Whitfield. That is true. But you are the president of a community whose master deed was written by a woman who spent 30 years building a fortress specifically designed to keep you out. You can sue. You can spend every dime of the reserve fund on legal fees, but I wrote this trust, and I do not make mistakes. He rotated his chair away from her, completely dismissing her the same way she had dismissed me for 12 years. Then he reached into the file one last time. There is one more thing you need to see, Lila. Daphne left a personal statement. She stipulated it only be played if the board threatened legal action. He placed a small digital recorder in the center of the table. If you walk away now, Mrs. Whitfield, this recording stays private. You can keep your reputation. You can tell the neighbors Eleanor left everything to charity and you graciously supported her decision. Karen laughed, a jagged, nervous sound. You're bluffing. What could she possibly say? She was just a housewife. Braxton looked at me asking permission. I nodded. He pressed play. Staticus, then the sound of a chair scraping. Then my mother's voice filled the room, calm, practical, and absolutely fearless. The voice she used when she was telling me the plumber was coming on Tuesday. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and if you're hearing this, it means Barbara Whitfield has decided that greed is more important than the truth. So I'm going to tell you exactly why I stayed silent for 30 years. And I'm going to tell you exactly what she is. Karen flinched like she had been slapped. The recording continued. I did not stay because I needed the HO. I did not stay because I loved the community aesthetic. I stopped loving this neighborhood the day Barbara told a new widow that her wind chimes were tacky and fined her $500 while putting up her own gaudy reindeer display the very next week. I stayed because I ran the numbers. If I had fought her, then she would have dragged us through court for a decade. She would have drained a reserve fund in legal fees just to spite me. She would have used her connections to isolate my daughter. So I chose a different strategy. I chose to fight with time instead of lawyers. Karen's hand was shaking so hard her HOA pin rattled. The voice on the tape hardened. To Barbara and the board, I want you to know that I watched you. I saw how you looked at Lila. I saw how you mimicked each other's cruelty. You learned early that in Willow Creek love is a limited resource, and to get your share you had to push the outsiders out of the circle. I do not blame you for surviving your own egos, but I could not allow you to inherit the weapon you used against my daughter. Braxton paused the recording. Before we hear the rest, I should clarify the legal structure. In addition to the main trust, which goes to Lila, Eleanor added a clause. She called it the Manners Clause. Karen's face was purple. Play it. Let's hear the old lady ramble. Braxton pressed the button again. My mother's voice returned sharp, decisive, the voice of the investor who had moved millions while everyone else slept. So I have added a clause to the distribution schedule. If any board member contests this trust or continues to harass my daughter, the entire reserve fund will be redirected to pay off the personal loans several board members have quietly taken against their homes using HOA collateral, including the second mortgage Barbara Whitfield took on her own property 3 years ago to fund her daughter's wedding in Bali. Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The recording ended with a calm sentence that had haunted my childhood. You will get nothing. It wasn't a prediction of my fate. It was a description of theirs. The silence after the recording was so complete, I could hear the hum of the air conditioning and the ragged breathing of the treasurer, who suddenly looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Karen sat frozen, her perfect posture collapsed like a marionette with cut strings. For the first time in 12 years, she looked small. Braxton didn't rush. He adjusted his cuffs and slid another folder across the table. This brings us to the second item of business. Eleanor anticipated you would contest this. She anticipated you would claim mental incompetence or undue influence. So she left a record. He held up a notarized protocol dated 5 years earlier. Item 1, Barbara will claim I did not understand the trust. Response, I wrote the initial draft myself in 1995. Item 2, she will claim I was influenced by my daughter. Response, Lila does not even know the trust exists. I kept her in the dark so she could learn to stand on her own feet. Item 3, Barbara will claim she provided for the community. Response, I have paid the property taxes on the clubhouse from my private account since 2008. I have covered her country club membership dues under the guise of community sponsorship. She did not live off the HOA. The HOA lived off me. Karen's lawyer, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. This is hearsay. The deceased is not here to be cross-examined. Braxton smiled thinly. It is a notarized affidavit admissible in any court. Overruled. The treasurer cleared his throat. I need to see the books. They're loans. Braxton opened the final section of the binder. UCC filings, public records showing Karen had pledged the same clubhouse renovation collateral to 2 different banks plus her own home equity line. Double dipping. Classic fraud. Karen tried one last time. This is all very touching, but a few receipts don't prove anything. It proves she gave pocket money. I will contest the trust. I will prove she was unstable paranoia, hiding assets, secret recordings. That is not the behavior of a sane woman. Braxton didn't blink. I anticipated the hysterical woman defense. It is a classic. Daphne left one more thing, an addendum. If you walk away now, the recording stays private. You keep your reputation. You can tell the neighbors Eleanor left everything to charity and you graciously supported the decision. Karen laughed again, but it came out broken. Play it. What could she possibly say? Braxton pressed play a second time. My mother's voice returned, even calmer this time. Hello, Barbara. If Elliot is playing this, it means you have decided to do exactly what I knew you would do. You're trying to break the trust. You're trying to hurt my daughter. So let me explain why I stayed. Because I know your vanity. You will tell everyone I was weak. You will rewrite history to make yourself the benevolent president and me the helpless donor. I did not stay because I needed you. I stopped respecting you the day you fined a veteran for flying an American flag one day past the approved holiday window while your own political banner flew year-round. I stayed because if I had left you then, you would have made it your life's mission to destroy me. So I gave you exactly what you wanted, a silent donor shadow. I let you win every argument about mulch colors. I let you believe you were the smartest person in the room. It was exhausting, Barbara. But it bought Lila a home. It bought her peace. It bought her a future where she could walk away from you without a lien on her credit score. The tape clicked off. Karen looked around the room at the board members who were suddenly very interested in their shoes. The treasurer was already pulling out his phone, probably texting his own lawyer. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold her. It won't stand. I will appeal. I have connections. Braxton stood up. You could try. But the trust has already notified the banks. The loans are being called. Your house, the clubhouse, the entire reserve fund is now under Lila's control. You have 24 hours to drop any legal action, or we foreclose on everything you used as collateral, including the vacation home in Florida you thought no one knew about. Karen's face went gray. She looked at me for the first time, not as an outsider, but as the woman holding the keys to her entire kingdom. I stood up. My voice was steady. You have always been extraneous to my mother's plan, Karen. Sign the resignation letter the board prepared, or watch your entire life get measured with your own tape. She signed. Her hand shook so hard the pen left ink blots on the paper. 3 days later, the cracks in Karen's empire were already showing. The community Facebook page that once sang her praises was suddenly full of neighbors posting old fines they had quietly paid, wondering why the reserve fund had been mismanaged. Someone anonymously uploaded the audio of the meeting. It spread like wildfire. Karen's golf cart was seen leaving the clubhouse at 2 a.m. with boxes of files. Her house went on the market the next week, listed as motivated seller. The bank called her loan the day after that. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I sat in Mr. Braxton's office again 6 months later, signing the final papers for the Lila Hayes Foundation. We liquidated the misused reserve fund, sold the vacation properties, paid off every fraudulent loan, and turned the rest into scholarships for first-generation homeowners and emergency fine relief grants. The North Star Initiative now covered HOA violations for single parents and veterans, so no one else would ever have to choose between groceries and grass length. The old clubhouse became a community art center with no approval process for decorations. Bird feeders were installed everywhere. Flags flew whenever people felt like it. Karen moved to Arizona. Last I heard, she was selling timeshares and telling everyone the Willow Creek story was fake news spread by bitter ex-residents. No one believed her. I kept enough money to fix my transmission, buy a winter coat that actually worked, and finally paint my front door the bright teal I had always wanted. The rest I gave away because that money had been made in silence, and I wanted it to make noise. 6 months after the hearing, I was walking past the old community sign when I saw a teenage girl sitting on the curb counting change for a bus ticket. She looked tired, worried about the same fines I once paid. I stopped. I thought about my mother. I thought about the thousands of cups of tea she had made, the thousands of insults she had swallowed, the years of planning she had endured so I could stand here today. I walked into the coffee shop across the street and put $100 bill in the tip jar. The bus fare for the girl in the blue jacket and a gift card for the rest, I told the barista. Tell her it's from a silent partner. I walked back out into the sun. The wind smelled like fresh-cut grass again, but this time it smelled like freedom. My mother had been right all along. Calmness is a superpower, but only when you're the one holding the keys. And now I was